I'll just get started. We're just going to do a kind of a casual conversation for a little bit, and then we'll get unprepared for this, but I'm going to limit it as best I can. And
then I'm going to start interviewing you.
Yeah, I'm smart. That's what happens.
I know.
So, and if you hadn't already heard earlier on Thursday morning, Liz already did one interview with artist talk with LBA with Keith Waits, who's also here on WXOX 97.1 Art FM. So you can find that recording online. We have a link to the homepage on our website if you want to listen to it. It's a terrific interview, and not just because they talk about me in it, but
we do. We said a lot of nice things about you.
I know my ears are burning. So I'm just going to rattle off some brief bio stuff. I'm sure most of you are already well aware of Liz, but this is just for posterity's sake, I guess. So Liz was born in Louisville and graduated from University of Louisville in 1981 with an undergraduate degree in sculpture. She lived and worked in New York City for several years before moving to Philadelphia and attended the University of Pennsylvania, where she received her MFA in painting in 1988. And I'm going to read some friends of yours wrote this statement for the show, correct?
Correct.
Emily Steinberg and Merrill Mason.
Yep.
Liz Price makes paintings that are focused on how color, light, and viscous materiality of paint are wedded within strong composition to create paintings that glow. Her work is a testament to the tenacity and single-minded vision of a true painter's painter.
Ooh,
it's true.
I love that.
Yeah.
I'm so grateful to them for doing this.
I know. I need to get my friends to write my statements. Price uses still life, a classic fundamental structure, as a point of departure. She sets up an arrangement, draped patterned fabrics, plants and ceramic pots, a piece of fruit, all on a table or stand, a historical painter's device. From here, she uses confident brushwork and heightened color to pick out a leaf, a bit of reflected light, the shadow of an object, and spread them across an empty painting surface, blowing the trope apart. These fragmented objects come to rest in a strong composition that echoes the original setup, but makes the viewer see it through different eyes. It has exploded in lush color and creamy gushes of paint. Now, I got to tell you, I don't know if you've heard anything about the Chat GPT stuff that's going on, but with friends like these, who needs Chat GPT to write your stuff for you?
Yeah, so. I will tell them. I will show them this. And can I interrupt you and say something about that? There is nothing worse than being a painter and being asked to say something about your work. And if I really could say something about it, I would, instead of painting, right? It's all about the painting. And I have obsessed for, as my dear husband, David Lamb, will tell you, for probably 3 months, ever since you said, can you just send me a few words about your paintings? And I have a lot of really good artist friends in Philadelphia who I admire, who are super articulate. And I'm like, well, should I ask, this one, that one? And then I would try it. And then my daughter said, just do a Chat GPT thing. That'll write it for you. And I'm like, I'm not that far gone. I can do it. I know I can do it. And, so many different thoughts came through to me, like, who are you looking to for validation in your work? And a number of those artists, I thought, I don't care what they think of my work. Like, you want the person who gets your work to write about it. And Emily Steinberg is a graphic novelist and a painter. She went to Penn. She was in the undergrad when I was in the grad school, but she still worked, we're good friends. And Merrill Mason, very talented, very different kind of work. They came into the studio and they're like, Merrill goes, she named it. She goes, Luminous, new work from the studio of Liz Price. I'm like, good, we got that. No, I mean, it was a big process. But I felt like they really nailed it, and I'm really grateful, because you do want your work. You just hope that somebody gets it the way you feel it. So thank you for appreciating that as well.
You're making this so easy on me because I haven't started the interview process yet.
Excellent.
So I wanted to touch on something that I already even mentioned previously about your background. So you got a bachelor's degree in sculpture in 1981, and then a master's in painting in 1988. And as an occasional artist myself, I kind of went along a similar path where I started off doing sculpture work, and lately, the past number of years, is all painting because it's harder to store sculptures under your bed.
Takes up too much room. Mm-hmm.
But so I was just wondering, curious to know more about what happened between 81 and 88 that you made that shift. And second part of the question is if you feel your experiences in sculpture have informed your work as a painter at all. My drawing professor used to always say that sculptors were the best drawers because they understood space better.
So. These are good questions.
Thanks.
You probably have a future in this area. Okay, the first question. Okay. My mother was a sculptor, Charlotte Price. I grew up in a household that her studio was off the kitchen. There was sculpture, there was art everywhere. We looked at a lot of art. They traveled. We kind of breathed it, right? And I went to U of L. I took drawing. I took textiles at the School of Art with Lotte Gordon. I did ceramic sculpture with Bob Lockhart at the School of Art and at Bellarmine. I took drawing with Kay Gerbola, Jim Gerbola at U of L. I did sculpture with Sam Richards. I don't know how I ended up with a degree in sculpture. I mean, we did some welding. I liked it. I mean, I just did a little bit of everything, and I did a lot of drawing, I have to say. So the last year of my program at U of L, I took a painting class with Kit Hillary, who has kind of fallen off the planet. I don't know where she is. She was a young artist, had moved here from Michigan, and I just loved it. Like, it was magic. I still have this painting I did where, like, you're trying to mix a color to be like that, and then you put it down and it doesn't work at all. And then you mix some other color and then you put it next to this other color and you're like, bingo, it's not that, but it's that. And it, it was incredible. It was just alchemy to me. And, I was gone. That was it. And then I graduated, and like, what are you going to do with that? I can paint a picture, And I'm like, well, I'm going to go to New York City. I don't know. There's like, I worked as a graphic designer for a year. I was terrible at that. It was just perfectly awful. It was all cut and paste, and I was terrible. And then I moved to New York City, and I talked my way into a job because I apparently can talk. And I got this job with a graphic designer, and I was in so over my head. It was terrifying. And deadlines, we were doing annual reports. Like, this is creative. And there were some creative people there. And in fact, though, I did some other stuff, and my boss, Alicia, said, well, why don't you do that with words? Actually, I took graphic design at U of L with Dan Boyarsky. He was great, but we had fun with it. We weren't like delivering a product. So anyway, I worked, and what I was really good at was production, doing color correcting on the press for annual reports. They'd fly me out to like freaking someplace in Ohio to go on press at 2 a.m. to check the CEO's color on his face. But I knew how to do it. I'm like, too blue, and they, new proofs. I mean, it was kind of interesting. And they offered me a job, and what really happened, I went to the Guggenheim Museum, and I saw these 2 little paintings by Morandi, this Italian painter, and they honestly hit me like in the solar plexus, and I was like, that's it, I'm done. I'm not doing this annual report stuff anymore. And I called my long-suffering and wonderful father. I said, Dad, I quit my job, and I want to be a painter. And he's like, okay, honey. I don't know what he thought. He was really nice. And later he said to me, the hard thing about being a painter is that you don't have a metric for your success. This is really about your, you. And I don't actually agree with that now because, if you can sell your paintings, that's a degree of success. I think that's pretty good. It's not a living. And there was a bit of a double standard there. So I had that moment, and with the Morandi paintings, and it was powerful. Like, I love paint. I just it's the thing that keeps me going. And I took classes at Columbia and applied to graduate school, and I got into Columbia and I got into Penn. And, you know, New York, everything is, there's just always something new. Like you can just go constantly looking at fabulous things. You go to Philadelphia, and I really remember having this feeling that I just want to see if there's something there for me in paint without all that hype and activity. And I think it's hard. Like, it's not always there. And David will tell you, I bitch and moan all the time about, like, oh, it was really a struggle in the studio today. And he's like, well, try my job, you know. Like, yeah, but you get paid for it. But, you know, and I like people. It's not a really happy place all the time in there by your studio, by yourself in your studio. And honest to God, this one, perfect example. I do it and then I feel great. Like, that is something new. I feel excited about it. And then I'm like, but is that a painting? Like, I don't even know what a painting is anymore. But the further I go down that road, I think, well, maybe I am actually doing something here. Mm-hmm. Where when you don't know, maybe that's when you know more. Mm-hmm. I don't know. So what was the other question?
Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. I do want, real quick, sidetrack. I've been looking over here at Miss Emma Lucille's outfit, her scarf and her shirt. Oh. And it reminded how perfectly it goes with Liz's work, and how Liz kind of coordinated some of her palette to her work, which I purposely, I didn't have a blue and white striped shirt, so I did the best I could with the orange. So I appreciate everyone here, your husband David, who matches the artwork. So,
he's nice too.
Yeah. So that's all.
We're done.
Not yet. Not yet.
Sorry.
It's okay.
Didn't mean to cut you off there.
That's all right.
I didn't answer the second question. It's okay.
I think you did.
Okay.
You did. So, so speaking of the earlier interview with Keith mm-hmm. on the radio, I really liked a lot of things that you were saying in that interview. How you're saying you're not conceptual but perceptual mm-hmm. as an artist, mm-hmm. And how color is your main emphasis. You like focusing on the fabrics and the patterns. Still lifes for you as subject matter are just a sort of jumping off point for viewers, just kind of like get them there to look at it as a way to kind of hook them in to start paying attention to the paint itself.
It's a way in.
You include the objects in your work to draw the viewer in closer, but what does working from a still life do for you as an artist?
Yeah.
If it's not as much about actual replicating a still life exactly, but, you know.
So, and when I say I do it just for me, I hope that other people, like I was saying earlier, that I hope, you know, people receive it and enjoy it and like it, but I really do it to please myself. But I want it to be good, you know, like there are all these judgments about what's good and all that stuff. But so the still life setup and the perceptual approach is because it's really, it's easy for me to just hit a dead end, you know, like I said in that interview with Keith. A lot of people have interesting ideas and conceptual work, like Saul LeWitt. There are all kinds of really interesting things in conceptual artwork, but it's not who I am. Mm-hmm. And I think the hardest thing about being an artist is that it's all this process of finding out, not that you know ahead of time what you have to say, because you don't, it just comes out. But the more you do it, the more you find out what you have to say as you go. So the perceptual part is that it gives me this opportunity to just turn my brain off and mix the color and paint what I see. And a good example is right behind Layla. Like sometimes you get a little out over your skis and you do a painting and it's kind of out there, like maybe the one next to it is a little wilder, and I really like that one. That's kind of the direction I want to go in. But you get out a little beyond yourself. And so then I'm like, okay, just keep it simple. Just do a painting. It's kind of a more traditional still life setup. Just be dumb. Just do the simplest painting you can do. And, you know, it's okay. It's all right. It's not bad. And there are even some interesting, there's a mirror in the bag. There's a little reflection going on. And then that compositionally is very interesting to me. And there's some color things that happen. And then so to me, still life is a way to limit yourself in terms of, in art, you can do anything. You can do shaped canvases. You can do so many different things. So I limit myself to oil on a rectangle. And then I kind of further limit myself to a still life setup. Now, the one thing I do like to do is bring in something living, because if it's just the objects, they're kind of flat. If you bring, that's why the flowers, it's such a cliche, but I don't care. They do it for me. I bring in a plant or something that is living, and it changes the dynamic. And then the other thing I like to do is paint outside every now and then. I don't like bugs. I don't like the wind. I don't like all the inconveniences of plein air painting, but the light is the bomb.
That's gonna be my next question.
And that is something when I look at this work now, one thing I want to do is kind of work on my lighting and manipulate that a bit more.
Yeah, so that's going to be part of my next question. I noticed a little more landscape starting to creep in to your collection of work, and maybe it's something that you've been doing for a while, and I just haven't seen it in what we've had here at the gallery. But I was curious if that was how that experience is painting landscape or outdoors or whatever, how that changes you as an artist or what you do.
Well, the light is incredible, and like Janet Fish is a friend and like very accomplished painter, and she grew up in Bermuda, and I know that affected her color. Her color is really high key, very intense, but her colors and it's light in the painting. I mean, that's kind of the goal, is to create a sense of light in the painting through color. And a lot of that has to do with natural light, because it's all out there. I mean, that's like, it's science that I do not know, but I know it's out there. Optics and prisms and light particles.
So something else that you mentioned in that interview was that once upon a time you used to do abstract painting. Until I think you said, maybe this is part, you said something about you ran out of ideas or something to that effect. I was curious about like these three pieces that kind of talk together. Are these some of your more recent pieces?
Yes. So, that one was 2 years. It's a little bit older, but not. They're all pretty recent, but these are both recent.
I was curious if I kind of can see these, particularly this, starting to move a little bit more towards that abstraction direction, and so I was curious if that was something that you think you might be exploring, continue to explore more, or is this more of just kind of exploring editing process more, or materiality?
I think I go back and forth.
Yeah.
And like I said, that smaller painting is more representational, more specific. And then I can move away from that, and it's really just in the process. Like, I want the work to take me to the abstraction rather than me have an idea like, I want to have a big open area and then a little focus here. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to, I don't know, it's like responding to what's happening as you're painting it is how you make those decisions, and it's very intuitive. So the main thing about abstraction, where I hit the wall, and I had a critic who said, you want the paint to refer to something beyond itself. And that can be an abstraction. It doesn't have to be something, but he kept talking about hard visual facts. And to me, there's a tension in a painting when there's a reference to something beyond itself that makes it more interesting.
Okay, this will be my last question.
Okay.
And it's not even about your artwork.
Okay.
But you have a unique perspective in that, for one, you've spent a lot of time in Louisville. You have a deep history with the art community here, between your mother working as an artist and you and a number of your friends when you were children making art and have grown into adult artists and everything. But you also have this perspective of having moved away to New York and lived in New York as an artist, in Philadelphia as an artist. So I was curious if, kind of thinking along the lines of New York pizza versus Chicago pizza,
Mm-hmm.
is there something about Louisville art that you see? Do you see any kind of connective tissue with Louisville art, whether the art itself or the community, the galleries, the artists, or is there anything that you would compare what you've experienced here versus in Philly or New York?
Gosh, I don't know enough about current Louisville artists because there are a lot that I don't know, and I don't know their work. Hi, look, she brought me flowers. But I think what is an advantage to being in Louisville, and it's the advantage I find living in Philadelphia, is that it's a calmer environment. Because you, like, to go back to that New York thing, when you're in New York City, it's like an education in itself. You can go to the Met, you can go to the Museum of Modern Art, you can go to the Whitney, you go to and 10 jillion galleries, and just, it's so much to learn.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you can't make art when you're doing that, and it goes back to that thing of like, what happens when you go into your room by yourself? What are you going to do? What is that? What is it you're finding there? And Louisville is a wonderful, calm place, where, and nature. I mean, I still believe it's like Cezanne, all art comes from nature eventually, whether you're actively using, there it is, those beautiful flowers you just brought. But there is nothing new under the sun, but there is in the natural world. So, so I can't really speak to the current. I mean, there's so many artists here I've learned just in the past 3 days that I'd never heard of, Like I know my people, but there are hundreds of others. Mm-hmm. And people here tonight I've talked to who are artists. And so I can't really talk about their experience, or I do think every city has a little bit different, like Philadelphia has a very specific art culture between the Academy of Fine Arts has been hugely influential because of the type of work that's there. And there's so many teachers from there, and Penn still got a program that's good. And there are a lot of schools up there, but I think every city has its own kind of character around art. But I think it's really just important for all of us to travel as much as we can and look at things and go to different cities. And, if you can do that, if any of us can do that, it feeds you and helps you get some perspective on what you're doing and where you live.
All right. Thank you, Liz.
Thank you. Daniel, it was awesome.
So, open it up if anyone has any other questions for Liz.
Listen up.